I had the pleasure of being invited to and had joined a meditation and discussion, or a Dharma talk rather, by the Praire Mountain Zen Center located in Longview, Colorado. And as you probably know, or could probably safely assume at this point, that, since the pandemic had hit, most Zen centers have been meeting online, either via Zoom meetings or whatever means they choose to do online meetings with cameras. And they'll do a guided meditation. They'll do meditation just like what we do here, and then go with the discussion. And other people will be in the meeting to participate. And myself and the rest of my local sangha here participated. We practiced with them and participated in listening to the Dharma talk of a guest speaker whose name is Steve Hagan. Let's see. It's not something I do that much anymore. More often, it still wasn't a daily thing for me. Oh, that's okay, Cassandrian, you do what you feel is good for you, That's perfectly fine. That's all good, So the gentleman's name, and I have the page up here, they posted the video, Reverend Steve Hagan, his lecture being the Zen in the Age of Disquiet. And I think his discussion is actually pretty relevant, because in this day and age, especially over here in the West, where, being on the go all the time, hustling, where, uninterrupted productivity seems to be king, and with everything that's going on, with everything that, all the things that are going on in our lives all at once, and, there's a lot of, there's a lot going on. And I think it does a very good job of, discussing this particular topic as it relates to Zen practice. He's a very good teacher, very interesting teacher. Also gives a little bit of history here. Steve was ordained as a Zen priest in 1979 by Katagiri Roshi. Katagiri being the name, Katagiri being the name, Roshi being the title. If you know anything about the Japanese language or Japanese culture, honorifics such as Mr., Ms., whatever, are tagged on at the end of names and are generally, they generally have to do with a societal rank of some sort, I want to say. So, Mr. and Ms., generally a san, someone who is like your supervisor or manager or something. Sama would be used. If they're a friend, for males, kun would be used, or for women, for girls, chan would be used. The indication of someone being a Dharma transmitted Zen priest, they use Roshi. So Katagiri Roshi is who ordained Steve Hagan. In 1989, he received formal endorsement to teach, which is Dharma transmission. Kun is only used for young boys. In adulthood, it just becomes san. Okay, thank you very much for the correction. Ava Cat, I appreciate that. I'm still studying all this stuff, so he's been an instructor in Buddhism at St. Olaf College, and in 1997 founded Dharma Field Meditation and Learning Center in Minneapolis, where he continued to serve as head teacher until recently. He is the author of Buddhism Plain and Simple, a book which I have and is in my list of books to read. You know how it is when you have a lot of books and you like to read them all? They're all in this list. It's in the queue. As well as several other books on religion, science, and philosophy. So, I think this is going to be a video. It should be a video. The talk is going to be kind of lengthy, but I think you're going to find it enjoyable, maybe even beneficial a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and get started with it.
This Dharma talk was recorded at Praire Mountain Zen Center in Longmont, Colorado.
So good morning. I'm very honored today to have a very special guest speaker, Reverend Steve Hagan Roshi. Where I met Steve when I showed up at Minnesota Zen Center in 1977. During the 12 years I practiced there, Steve was one of the most dedicated of the practitioners. He was the third priest ordained by Katagiri Roshi in 1979. Katagiri Roshi used to travel quite a bit to teach other places.
Evidently, this is just the audio.
Priests gave a lot of the talks. So in a way, Steve has been my teacher one of my teachers since 1977, because I heard him give many talks. Part of his teaching was how he changed over those 12 years. So we've always had this connection. And one more personal note, at some point, Steve decided to stop wearing these fancy Japanese, Chinese robes. So he gave his robes to Shokin, and then my robe was wearing out, and they're really expensive. And so,
can everyone hear this okay?
So why don't you see if these fit? So, they say that clothes makes the man, but for the last 15 years, I've been wearing Steve's robes. So I'm very grateful for that. So if Steve wants, if you want to unmute now, and I'll mute, and please share your talk with us.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to be here. It's good to see you all, and especially you. I always say Cliff, but Jodo. Maybe I should use your Dharma name. But I didn't realize that my robes ended up in your hands. I am very pleased to hear that, because I think of all the people that Shokin may have given them to. You're certainly a special guy, and as you said, we go way back and good friends for a long time. And anyway, so wonderful to see you again, Cliff. I'm so used to calling you, and all of you in your group there in Colorado. So, well, I think today maybe I'll say a little bit about. I guess I asked Cliff if there were some things that maybe your group would be concerned with, and one of the things was just the kind of the issues of the day. We live in seemingly somewhat turbulent times, difficult times on many fronts, and with the environment and with our current day politics and so many other issues that take place in the world today. That I think disturbs a lot of it. And of course we have the pandemic as well. So one of the options then was that I could talk on Zen, and given all these disturbing current events that we're all dealing with today. And so I titled the talk Zen in the Age of Disquiet. And disquiet is something that our meditation, well, let's put it this way, that we can learn to take up this meditation that we do. I'll be saying more about it as we go on here. But we can do this in the midst of disquiet and trouble and noise and disturbance and everything else that might come our way. Certainly many things have in recent times. But of course, this is always the case with us human beings. Our own times will seem perhaps particularly disturbing, and sometimes are more eventful and disturbing than others, to be sure. But even in our personal lives, difficulties come along. And being human beings, we're all mortal. That's an issue for us normally. And of course, we, under any kind of circumstances, our loved ones will pass away, and many will before our own time. So this is kind of an ongoing issue. You know, there's a story I've often used of a fellow who was disturbed and bothered by the difficulties that he was experiencing in life, and he went to see the Buddha about this. And he complained a bit. Perhaps I'm sure many of you probably know this story. You know, he complained to the Buddha about his life. He was a farmer, and of course there's plenty of issues there. Sometimes it rained too much, sometimes not enough, and he went on about all of these things. And he had a family. He was married, and you know, sometimes he would have some issues with his wife and children. And anyway, the fellow just kind of went on like this. The Buddha listened patiently. And then finally the Buddha said, he said, well, I can't help you, you know, with all these things you're listing here. And the man became furious. You know, I thought you were a great teacher. I thought you could help me with this. And the Buddha said, well, no, we all have problems. There's always disturbances in our lives. And anything can come along at any time and disturb us greatly. And well, the guy became furious. He said, well, I thought you were, you know, a great teacher. You should be able to help me. And well, the Buddha said, well, no, and the Buddha had said, yeah, well, we all have 83 problems. And this is the story of the 83 problems. Of course, 83 doesn't mean 83. It just means a big number. We have a large number of problems. But here's called 83 problems. And the fellow just really became pretty angered and disturbed by what the Buddha was telling him here. And it made it seem even more hopeless than ever, you know. And the Buddha said, yeah, you might be able to get rid of, you know, one or two, you know, but others will come and take their place. And we always have these 83 problems, these many problems. So what good is your teaching? Then said the man. He said, and the Buddha said, well, yeah, it can help you with the 84th problem. And the fellow said, the 84th problem? What is that? And the Buddha said, well, you don't want to have any problems. And well, that's the 84th problem. If you can take care of that problem, then what is your problem? You realize what the Buddha is saying here, that this isn't about pie in the sky or puppy dogs and sunrises or whatever. This is life. And there's ups and downs, there's disturbances. And they could be great or just small everyday irritations that are constantly with us. This is life. And it entails these sorts of things. Of course, happy times as well come along. And then they go. And that's very sad. We long to get them back, or would try to create another happy time to show up. And maybe very soon, if we can, you know, just work on this. But then it rains that day, whatever. This is life. So our approach to this, here we're living with this pandemic right now. And the political scene is very disturbing. And of course, what we're doing to the planet and the environment, and with all of still we have horrendous weapons that we can use against each other, and I don't know, cyber attack, all the stuff that goes on. And we might feel like, well, how can we even deal with this? And what can I do? And we might want to go out there into the world and straighten up all these things. But as the Buddha pointed, well, yeah, you might be able to take care of this or that, but you're not going to take care of all of them, not all at once. So we really need to understand this. And what the Buddha is saying that, you know, the problem that you're expressing here, overall, never mind what the details are, we don't want to have these problems. We want everything to be just kind of hunky-dory, and where everything is just sweet and nice and fine. That isn't going to happen. Not out there. We call this world muddy water. You probably know this through Cliff's teaching. That we have that recitation of in this world of emptiness, may we live in muddy water with purity like a lotus. Nothing surpasses the boundless mind. Thus we bow to Buddha. This is right at the very heart, points to the very heart of our teaching. But we have to remember that in this world of emptiness, may we exist in muddy water. Muddy water. We might feel like what we need to do is to make the water clean and pure. Go out there and straighten this out or straighten that out. And of course, we can make these efforts, in small ways. But just realize you're only going to clean a portion of the water at best. But the idea that we have to just make everything so that there won't be any disturbances from now on. This isn't our way. The way, the Soto way, is to acknowledge where we are. And yet we can be here with the kind of purity that we seek by stop seeking for it, by stop trying to create it. We can realize it right here within our own hearts and minds. This is our way. And so that this is what the Buddha then taught. Our tendency is always to go out there. We're disturbed by that out there. We want to change that. We want to remove the threat, or whatever it is that we see there. The attention is generally always out there, but it is here, right where we sit. And when I say sit, I don't necessarily mean sitting in Zazen, but where you stand or walk or lie down, right here in this moment, whatever this moment entails. This is where we can find whatever it is that we otherwise think we need to seek, peace or happiness or enlightenment or something like that. You will never find it out there, because this is never apart from where you are right now, including the muddy water, but also the peace, the settledness of mind. Dogen Zenji, I think perhaps you all know Dogen, so I don't need to introduce him here for you, but great teacher in our school. He just pointed out that, well, there's a number of things he pointed out that might be helpful for us here, but our tendency is to, in looking out there and holding views and this sort of thing, our attention always being out there. And then we see this way of sitting down, being quiet. We have shikantaza is the kind of sitting that maybe we can discover. It means, literally, it's on the order of something like just sitting. But this shikan, this is tranquility and awareness. Just sitting with tranquility and awareness. The peace we might seek. We might be thinking we're seeking. That'll disturb your mind right there if you think you're seeking this peace or something like, or enlightenment. Or that sort of thinking, that sort of cast of mind will always keep you from it. It'll keep you separated. It'll keep you locked into yourself. But again, so here I am, and I'm looking out there, and I want to arrange everything just fine, and then I want to do my meditation, and I don't want to be disturbed in my meditation, even though the meditation takes place on this planet full of a lot of disturbances. But Dogen, I was going to say this about Dogen. He says that in his Fugan Zazengi, a quiet room is suitable. Yeah, so go sit in a quiet place. A quiet room is suitable. But he doesn't say it's required. Doesn't say it's mandatory. It's imperative. It's suitable, but it might not be available to you always. From time to time, from day to day, there might be instances where you're just not going to be able to find that space, that place. So it's suitable. But the quietness and the peace, the shikan, the tranquility and the settledness, and also the quiet and undisturbed awareness that we otherwise may be thinking we're seeking. It isn't a matter of seeking. Just take it up right now. This is what we need to learn to do. And then it doesn't matter. Yes, it's storming outside, or the environment is collapsing outside. The political arena around us, people are just going crazy, completely insane on various factions, various sides. And of course, maybe some people might seem a little more sane, a little more reasonable, and maybe you want to join with them and work with them. That's fine. but be very careful in what you're doing. And particularly when it's involving you in projecting yourself somewhere out there into the world, and how you might be interacting with others and that sort of thing. The peace that we want is right here in our own hearts and minds. This is where we find it. This is where it is. If we can learn to recognize how it is that we disturb that in ourselves and in our own minds, even as we go out there trying to establish peace and fairness and justice and all the wonderful things that we seek. But if we don't know this within our own hearts, and this is where we find it, this is where it is, we're going to be carrying on. We will very easily carry on in ways that we find in others are not desirable at all, that are threatening, that are troublesome, that are stirring up the muddy water again. So this is a very important thing to understand. There's a story of a fellow who's in our lineage, Cliff, Jodo, and me and Katagar Roshi's lineage. Way back there in China, this is Yakusan Hagen. He was sitting in meditation one day. He became a great Zen master. This was early on, though, in his career or whatever. He was sitting in meditation, and his teacher, Soto Zen, came along and said, "What are you doing?" And Yakusan said, I'm not doing anything. And Sekete said, "So you're sitting idly?" And Yakusan said, "If I were sitting idly, I'd be doing something." Sekete, just testing him. Whoa. Got a pretty understanding student here. So he tests them further. He says, so what is it you're not doing? And Yakusan said, even Buddhas don't know. They don't know because this isn't a conventional kind of knowing. They don't have any ideas about this, about stuff like this. What they know, what the awakened know, and it is knowing, but it's not ordinary, it's not conceptual knowing, it's not intellectual knowing. It's direct knowing, somewhat similar to the way you know the taste of orange juice when you taste orange juice. It's not a knowing that you can describe to others so that they would know it. But it's a direct knowing. It's an immediate knowing. This is how we know truth and reality and the peace to here are alluding to. And we do know this, unlike orange juice, where you have to go find some orange juice to taste the orange juice. Here, in this case, you do taste reality all the time. It is impossible not to. You can't leave it. You can't get outside of it. But this is where we find the peace and the settledness of mind. And we can come to it right here, wherever we are, whether we are sitting in meditation or not. It has nothing to do with that. Whether we demand a quiet space, well, if you demand a quiet space, this isn't peace. This is unsettledness right there. But so this way is where we stay with at least some awareness of our own mind and the nature of our own mind, the leanings, the inclinations of our own mind, the actions that come out of our own mind and our own thinking. We can tell what is peaceful and settled, and we can tell when there's disturbance there. If you find some disturbance, if you are disturbed, excessively so, by the events of the current times we live in, just look at this. Don't spend too much time looking at all of those things. Don't ignore the things out there, certainly. I don't mean to tune out anything here, far from it. But if you're lost with this, you're going to make all of that very real. We reify the various things that are appearing in our minds, really. And when these things become solid and real for us, they can become very disturbing. And they can take us away. They take us away from this very place, even though we don't go anywhere really, because we're always here in reality, in peace. But our attention is drawn toward this or that once again. And in doing this, you will notice you have a very distinct sense of myself here in the midst of all of this. That's disturbing me. This is what we're kind of perpetuating there when we're not careful, when we don't quite realize what we're doing. So it is in coming back to what Yakasan was referring to there. I'm not doing anything. So then you're sitting idly. You know, I'd be doing something if I were sitting idly. I have no intention or schedule or idea of something I'm trying to accomplish here by my not doing anything. That is to do something. It is to really see what this is and to act out of this, even in the midst of when we go out into the world. And yes, there appears to be doing and speaking and coming and going and all of this. We can travel through all of this, live with all of this, move in and out of all of this with a peaceful mind, with a settled mind. And that is this tranquility that is in the Shikan of Shikan Taza. And also with the concentration, the awareness to be right here and to bring ourselves back to this. Even when we get up from our cushion, we go out into the world, and there's a lot of interaction taking place. If we can at least keep this with us to some degree, or learn how to bring ourselves just back to this, to know where you are, to realize what is taking place around you, to realize that this in its wholeness is your life, so you don't need to be disturbed by it. But if you project it out there and you insist it's out there and somehow separate from me and I got to do something about that now, this isn't Shikan. You have lost this and you're tossed about once again and kind of caught up in our ordinary mind of distraction and you know, chasing after and running from and all of that. So it's for each of us. You know, it's for, I can't do this for Kage Roshi, couldn't do this for me. Jodo can't do this for you. But it's for each of us to see what is taking place in this moment. We learn to watch our own minds and to do this without judgment, because with judgment, we are solidifying this and that, setting one thing against another once again. What it is that the awakened always bear in mind, that they never lose sight of, is wholeness, is totality. It is a recognition that this is the life that's actually being lived out. And to the extent that we can remain with that, we don't quite so easily fall back into our own petty life, our small life, where we're being tossed about once again and driven by this or that. So we can learn to more or less take on. This is what they awaken to, is totality, is wholeness, and they learn to come back to this and find, you know, settledness of mind there. So, well, I've spoken for, I guess, about half of the hour here, so maybe I've said enough. I can't think of, well, if something else comes to mind, I'll jump in with it. But maybe you have a question about anything I've said here this morning. I'm not quite sure how you handle this, Jodo, but if there's some procedure, go ahead. So, okay, Shozan.
Oops, yeah, I'm unmuted. In Buddhism is not what you think. You talk about seeing. Could you say a few words about that, please? And thank you very much for your talk so far.
Thank you. Yeah, seeing, I'm assuming you probably mean seeing when I italicize that word in print. Yeah, and very good question. And a lot of people get a little confused by this, and I'm sorry about that, but I don't know how else I can convey what I'm trying to convey there. If I don't italicize the word see, I'm just talking about seeing as we ordinarily, I'm seeing with the eyes, just physical seeing. You see an object and that sort of thing. Or I might even be talking about seeing an idea, like you explained something to me, I didn't get it, and all of a sudden, oh, I get it, I see. And so it's kind of a seeing of that sort too. Still dealing with an object, a mental object or an idea or a concept or something. But when I italicize the word, oh, I should say this too, that, and I've just finished a book where I get into this to some degree. It's called The Grand Delusion. And if you're all interested in that, I think I hope I bring out that word in such a way that it starts to make more sense, because it's kind of central to what I'm dealing with in the book. But the seeing, italicized, I'm talking about basically our perceptual experience, which isn't of physical reality necessarily, as opposed to conceptual seeing, where we see objects, where we see ideas, thoughts and concepts, and things of that sort. So one is conceptual, our ordinary take, and as far as we, most of us are concerned, this is it. This is the range and limit of what it is that we take in. But the full range of what we take in is actually within the perceptual. Here's one way of looking at it, that the main difference between just a regular person and a Buddha is this difference between, put it this way, that your perceptual experience is identical to that of a Buddha. Okay, you, no matter who you are, no matter what your understanding is, your actual experience of the world and of reality is no different than one who is awake. The only difference is it's not in the experience itself, but in how we take the experience or how we understand the experience. And in those who are awake, they realize when the conceptual is taking place, and they're not taken by that. They're not disturbed by that. That's the stuff that's stirring up the muddy water all the time. They see that for what it is, and it isn't totality. It isn't wholeness. It isn't the whole picture. But the perceptual experience will give you this. This is what you are experiencing. So basically, when we wake up to the whole. And in that kind of knowing or seeing or realizing, since it's radically different from our usual conceptualized versions of what our experience is, I wanted to designate it in a different way, and that's why I italicized it. But again, I explain this and give it to you in far better detail than I did here, in a little more organized way, perhaps, in that book, The Grand Delusion. And the book, The Grand Enlightenment, one way to look at enlightenment is nothing more than seeing delusion, waking up to delusion. And so what I'm dealing with in that book, The Grand Delusion, is this fundamental basic confusion that we have about the nature of our experience here. And a lot of the discussion there has to do with this difference between our conceptual take on the world and our actual immediate direct perceptual experience of the world, of life, of reality, of ourselves and everything else. So that's what that book is about. And it just came out last fall. And by the way, too, at our center in Minneapolis here, every Wednesday night we have discussions of this book if that interests you. And the book has a website that you can go to and you can find those discussions. And we record them too, and so the past discussions we've had are all there available as well. But if you go to either go to dharmafield.org, that's the center where I teach, and or you can go to the book's website, which is and in that case, just scroll down to somewhere down there. There's a Wednesday night discussions. Just look for that, and then you can click on that and you can go right in. And with the book's website, that's you guys are all in Colorado, you know mountains, and so perhaps you know the abbreviation for mountains. It's MTS, right? Did you guys, or you're probably so sophisticated, you probably have, since you live with them every day. But my understanding is that mountains are abbreviated MTS. And then, so the website is, we have that expression in Zen, mountains are mountains, rivers are rivers. And I studied this for a bit, and mountains are not mountains, and rivers are not rivers. And finally, we get back to mountains are mountains, and rivers are rivers. That's also dealt with in this book. But so the website is MTS, the 3 letters, mountains are mountains. So MTS, and then the letter R, and then MTS again. That's the book's website. Oh, and then .com. I was crazy to go with a .com rather than .org or something like that. So anyway, but if you go there, the same thing, you can get in on discussions of this. But I get into what you asked about there, shows on in quite a bit of detail, and a lot more too as well. So
Thank you.
It's about seeing that grand delusion, and which is what awakening is. Okay.
So would it,
I'm sorry, what?
conceptual, is it like we have blinders on that keep us from seeing the perceptual view?
Well, no, no, because we never lose the perceptual view. What it is, though, is that our conceptual take on the world is so compelling and so powerful and overwhelming that we're completely distracted by that and taken by that.
So we just don't pay attention to the perception.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So
Okay.
we're in another way of looking at it, we're just simply caught up in our thinking.
Yeah.
That's why we have people like, I quote Dogen in there in a couple of places where he says, this comes from his, somewhere in his Shobogenzo Zumonkey, where he says, I tell you, monks, the reason you don't wake up, you're going to get it in a nutshell. The reason you don't wake up is because you don't relinquish your views. You don't let go of what you think. Also, I quote Wang Po in there, where he says, the wise reject what they think, not what they see. That seeing, I would italicize that seeing. They reject the conceptual, not the perceptual. That's the wise. The foolish reject the perceptual and not the conceptual. You know, they reject what they see, but not what they think. And, you know, and we have this in other places too, where various Zen masters just tell us, you know, let go of what you think. Zen master EQ, he says, what is it? He says, let go of the idea I exist. If you could let that one go. Of course, that's not easily done, but I help you with that in this book and tell you what it is you need to look for. And I'm not really telling you, you know, how to wake up or what it is you're going to see. We can't talk about that. That's just conceptualizing again. But what I'm doing in that book is try to help you see where this kind of stuff that we're taken by and that we get confused by. And that's what I'm dealing with in that book.
Thank you.
Thank you. David.
Hello, Steve. It's really good to meet you. I'm David.
Yeah, hi, David.
Hi. And thanks for your talk. It's really great to have the teachings come down from our traditions and from before. So I really enjoyed that. Yeah. I have a question about in Katagary's book, You Have to Say Something.
Yeah.
He has this analogy of a boat in a choppy water, and from moment to moment, we're getting rocked by the waves, you know, and then he says the most important thing is to have a direction and put the rudder into the water, and then the boat planes and goes in a direction, but that we shouldn't get attached to the destination. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on that, rather than just sitting there and drifting aimlessly from moment to moment, and what, you know, how important is it for us to have a direction? Thank you.
Yeah, it is important for us to have a direction, but if it's something that we can't attach to, that isn't particularly helpful. Though it depends on what your direction is. If it's you know, time to go eat and you need to cook dinner, and you know, you have certain, you're going to be directing yourself in one way or another with some objective in mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to this matter of waking up and realizing the nature of our experience here, then if you set some kind of an object out there for yourself, that isn't particularly helpful. If you have, in fact, it's not helpful at all. And so it's a matter of just settling. I don't remember that passage that you may have mentioned of the Katagiri, though I know he's taught in ways like that. That it's important to have some kind of destination in mind, but if it's something graspable, that isn't helpful for us, because that'll just be some ordinary thing, and there's still you who can now move toward it, and then maybe at some point grasp that. That isn't particularly helpful. What he's speaking of there, I think, just from my experience with Katagiri Roshi, is that what he would talk about is where you set your mind on wholeness or enlightenment, awakening. But that isn't something particular. That isn't something that's going to form as an object in your mind. We'll have names for that, like enlightenment or something like this. And then if we form that into a particular thing, and now we're going to go after that, that's confusion. That really won't help us. So it's more a matter of, I want to be awake in this moment, to not lose sight of that. And well, what is it to be awake? I don't know. Yeah, because it will never form as an object. Okay, so now what can we do? We can see. This is relatively easy if we just train ourselves to start paying attention. We can see when we're off the mark. We can see that I'm going after that. I'm trying to make it go that way. I think I should be doing this. I want to straighten that out over there, or those, even worse, those people over there. That's where we tend to go. And so what we need to have in mind is to realize where we are going, and that isn't where we want to go. We're steering in the wrong direction. Just kind of let go of that. But what's the goal then? What do we keep our mind on? Stay present. Bring yourself back to this, that is it. It is not something you can grasp. This is why it's difficult for us, because when I'm looking at them or that or this or that, that's easy to keep yourself focused on that and grasping that. That's the conceptual. I was talking to Shozen here a little bit about perceptual and conceptual. That's where we tend to be and where we remain. We need to wake up to the fact that we are having this universal, this total experience, this experience of wholeness, totality that we can't grasp, but we can notice when we've diverted ourselves from that. And how is that? Well, because we're aiming for this thing or that thing, or thinking I should do this or that. I should clean up the muddy water. I should straighten out the world, and all of that. When and again, there are certain actions we can take that are fine in that regard. But the first thing we need to do is to wake up. And so that's the goal. That's the thing we put our attention on. But you can't aim at it because you don't know what it is. And besides that, it's ubiquitous. It's wherever you point, you're sort of aiming at it. But if you're still thinking of it in terms of an object, that there's some thing I'm trying to reach, that's not the way to see this. This is why enlightenment is called waking up. We wake up to it. We don't find it. We don't uncover it or something like that. We don't, we seek for it as if it were in some place, some other place other than where I am now. Well, that's not the case. It's always with you. It's just a matter of waking up. So that's why it's called waking up. We finally wake up to what's actually taking place here. And what's actually taking place here isn't of the sorts of things we form in our minds, of this and that, the things that appear to be coming and going and all of that. So that's the destination. So we put our attention on that, but that's something you can't actually put your attention on. What you can put your attention on are things that you just see if you can avoid those or not get too caught up with those kinds of things. It doesn't mean that we don't engage them at all, because a lot of these things are practical things you need to do. You need to eat and find shelter and stuff like this. So, just practical things in the world. But to finally experience an awakened mind isn't like one of those things. It is just noticing when your mind is tending to go this way or that way. And now you're forming, and when the sense of self is starting to build here. Other things to look for, to the extent that we might become angry, that's a sign that the self is looming pretty large right now in this picture. Something isn't quite going my way, or it's irritating me in some way, so anger is starting to come up. This is telling us that we're moving in a direction that's going to get us more bound in delusion and confusion. If we recognize that, maybe we can learn to, particularly with the anger thing, that's difficult because it's hard to let go of your anger. But if we start to realize what that means, that's what's going on in your life, is that you're getting caught up in a sense of self. And so unwittingly, we keep building this sense all the time and engaging it and exercising it with pretty much everything that we're doing, as opposed to putting our attention on the whole and realizing that it doesn't belong to this or that or the next thing. It embraces everything. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
Well, thank you for that.
okay, thank you. Anything else? Jodo, Cliff. I see a blue hand next to you there, Cliff.
Okay, here I am.
Yeah.
Okay, I say you can call me either Jodo or Cliff, just don't call me
Okay.
Bigfoot.
I've called you Cliff for so many years, it's hard for me to, and I don't see that often anymore, so I don't get the opportunity, so, yeah.
Just don't call me late for Zazen.
No, no.
So, you're recommending switching from conceptualization to perception.
Yeah.
So instead of I'm angry, you're like seeing what's
I'm
around
kind of
you.
I'm missing some of what you're saying there. I'm sorry.
You're recommending switching from conceptualization to perception.
Yeah.
Can you hear that?
Well, not switching, but just recognizing that there's a difference here, and not to get too caught up in the conceptual. Don't lose sight of the perceptual. Don't lose sight of wholeness.
So my question is, Dogen seems to talk about not attaching to the perceptual, going beyond the perceptual.
Well, we can't attach to the perceptual. We can attach to ideas of the perceptual, but that's a conceptual object again. But that's not actually the perceptual. The perceptual doesn't give us any objects.
Well, that's interesting. So does that help explain, people freak out about the Heart Sutra, no eyes, no ears, no nose.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that related to not conceptualizing the perceptual?
Right. Yeah, and that's what a true eye is, the perceptual. It's not the conceptual. It's not an eye. You just take an eye, it doesn't see. The perceptual, the visual perceptual experience, even to call it visual is probably already dividing it up and making it to some degree conceptual. But it isn't of anything at all in particular. It is of already right from the very start of wholeness, of totality. And but when we see an object, then once again we're dealing with the conceptual. So no eye is a true eye, because an eye is not an eye. An eye by itself isn't an eye. It involves light. It involves dimension and distance, and it involves. Well, we could start exploring this a bit, and we start to realize that actually it involves sight, involves the entire universe. I mean, everything's involved with it, and so it isn't just an eye. So a true eye then isn't an eye. And we have this teaching. It shows up in all kinds of places, like in the Diamond Sutra, where it says that a bodhisattva who's a true bodhisattva is not a bodhisattva. Because if a bodhisattva were a bodhisattva, then it would be just some small thing. It would be an individual person there. And then the vow of this one is to go out and save all beings. And this, we'll start thinking in these ways. This is all being caught up in the conceptual. And conceptually, this looks impossible. It looks overwhelming. It's what can I do about this? And we'll remain lost in that. Whereas if we see this in terms of the perceptual experience that's taking place here, the true bodhisattva is the world itself. But for that matter, so are you. And your life is truly the life of the world. If you see it this way, it'll be a radically different life that you'll be living. It doesn't mean that then all the distinctions that are there, the conceptualized, the things of this and that are appearing here within the experience, these don't go away or anything like that. They're not ultimately real. They're real enough, and we need to, pay some attention to all of this. But what's ultimately real doesn't belong to you or me or any other thing or idea or thought or feeling. It is the full experience, that's taking place now. Again, I deal with all of this stuff in this book that I just finished, The Grand Illusion. So, where I can spell it out in more refined detail that I'm giving you here. But now, is that okay, Cliff? Or
Yeah. Thank you very much.
okay.
Any other questions?
Oh, Paula.
Well, when you use the words totality
Mm-hmm.
and wholeness,
Yeah.
and our perceptual field, I notice when I sense into the field.
When you sense what?
Sense into the field.
Okay.
Or maybe it seems like my perception goes out.
That's more that's more conceptual though, what you just said.
It's conceptual?
Yeah,
Because
because
it feels like an experience. It's experiential.
Oh yeah. Yep. That's what experience is perceptual. Though there is a conceptualized version of the perceptual, and that's normally where we're caught. We're caught up with that. And that's where you appear, and then just whatever it was you expressed there, that's kind of what you were referring to. The perceptual is much quieter than that, but all pervading.
Well, I guess I feel a sense of that moving outside of myself. You say all pervading.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. We can feel this. Yeah, and you probably do. It's good you you get some sense of that.
I'm getting a sense of that as you talk.
Yeah, but it's the I part that you're still dragging with you. That just look at what that is. Just don't do anything about it, but just start to notice that is a little extra baggage there. Even though when we're still caught in the conceptual, that'll seem like, well, that's the whole thing. Well, no, actually, it's not. And if we can finally let go, like EQ says, let go of the idea I exist. And that really can't be done by us trying to get rid of the idea I exist. We can only rid ourselves of that when we finally truly wake up to what the perceptual experience is. And the I is not there. The I belongs to the conceptual. And the conceptual is necessary. It's important. We can't get rid of it. It's functional and useful and all of that. But the problem we have is that we mistake it for reality. Reality is ultimate reality is in the perceptual.
I think what I'm trying to say is when I'm sensing into the field more, that my sense of self seems a little bit more dissipated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the field contains me, but it's so much more than me. And
just let it dissipate you completely. So you're totally lost in the field. You are the field. You're not you.
yeah,
You're the whole thing.
yeah.
But it isn't you anymore. It isn't me either. It isn't any of us. But we can lose ourselves. And this is what EQ is saying. And he says, let go of the idea I exist. And so when we keep reframing everything in terms of myself, and that's bondage. It's not real freedom. But it's just a matter of noticing this. And first we might just get a little glimmer of what it is. And we have to notice what we're doing. We're hanging on to things. This is what we need to start to wake up to. And Dogen says, this is the reason we don't wake up is because we keep hanging on to our ideas. And the reality that's being lived out will never go into an idea. You'll never be able to hold it in it. That's why the Buddhas, like Ikkyo said, even Buddhas don't know. They don't pull this into ideas, but at this point, if they're Buddhas, they know better. They can in the way of using concepts and things for our practical everyday world. That's fine, but they don't believe it. They don't grasp the self as though it were a real thing. It's an appearance. It looks like something is here, but if we're awake to it, we realize that there isn't anything that's grasped here at all. If we're not awake to it, we're grasping, and then we're measuring everything out accordingly, in relation to it. It's simply a matter of just seeing, and that's the kind of seeing I would italicize. Either we see, and of course it isn't we or you or I or me that sees. That's all kind of dropped. There's just seeing. There's just awakeness. Wang Po says there's just one mind, the mind with a capital M, but just the one mind, besides which nothing exists. But it's just a matter of seeing this. Still, there are the appearances of coming and going. This is a part of this reality. It's the conceptual part. It's not bad or wrong. We don't get rid of it. We can't get rid of it anyway. That's the muddy water. But we can learn to live in all of this with some peacefulness and harmony and understanding and calmness and settledness, where we don't further the pain and the misery and the confusion of our life and others, the lives of others around us as well. But it really is a matter of just seeing, not thinking. That's why Dogen says, cease from practice based on intellectual understanding of pursuing words and following after speech. And learn the backward step that turns your light inwardly to illuminate the self, your true self, which is not you. It is just this. So we have these kinds of teachings. They're salted all the way through all of our the great teachings anyway that we have that have come from enlightened masters and teachers. There's a lot of nonsense out there too in current times, and as well as in ancient times. There's some teachings that were misunderstood and handled not too well. But it's a matter of, but you can always just take it in, bring it in close to your heart and look at these things. We can kind of tell when we're looking at the truth. We can sense that. But that becomes easier to sense the more we learn to let go of our own preconceived ideas about this or that, or what it is that we want, or what it is that we, makes us feel better, or just let go of all those things. It isn't a matter of feeling bad or anything else. It's just, but don't hang on to it. So it's all very simple. As Kagyu Roshi used to say, this is very simple, but we're complicated. Our minds are complicated. We make everything complicated. And again, that's through our thinking, which we tend to grasp, not what we actually directly see, which is enlightenment. And that is yours even now. It is no different for a Buddha than it is for you. It's just a matter of waking up to this. And it is waking up. It's not figuring something out. There's nothing to figure out here. It's just a matter of noticing. We can't notice the awakening or the enlightenment. We can notice the delusion. Again, that's why my book, The Grand Delusion, that's because I can point to that. I can't point to, if I could point to what it is we need to awaken to, I would. But it's not an object. It's totality. But it's the broken out stuff of this and that and you and me and all these other things. This is where all the pain and suffering and confusion and fear and torment and longing for and running after and chasing, after and running from. That's where all that takes place. And it doesn't have to be quite so frenzied if once we start to realize the nature of this world, of this and that. Then we can settle down. That's the shikan. That's the tranquility and concentration of mind.
You've been listening to a Dharma talk from Praire Mountain Zen Center in Longmont, Colorado. To learn more about us or to make a donation, visit us at prairiemountain.org.
Okay, all right, well, I hope you enjoyed that talk and got what you wanted or needed out of it. He presents some pretty interesting ideas, some pretty neat ideas. But yeah,